My mother always said, "Born plain, die plain." Then she supported my sister in abandoning her children at my doorstep, and now I'm taking legal action against both of them after they tried to sabotage my career. My sister always got what she wanted. No matter how cruel or unfair she was to me, she escaped consequences because she was the cherished miracle child. Her striking beauty undoubtedly played a role in this. With her lush, wavy hair and bright eyes, my mother spent years comparing our looks. I had dark eyes and straight hair, but I was never as captivating as my sister. My mother loved pointing out our differences. Once we hit our teens, she constantly urged me to mimic my sister's style and pleaded with her to show me how to apply makeup. But whenever I asked my sister for help to enhance my appearance, she mocked and belittled me. That's how our resentment toward each other grew. I believe my sister inherited the worst traits from our mother, while I rejected them entirely. I think my mother's endless praise of her beauty turned my sister into a selfish person who cares only about herself and believes her looks let her get away with anything. My mother's comparisons and criticism left me with low self-worth, and as an adult, I'm quiet and reserved. Some call me a doormat. I recently began therapy to build my confidence. Though it's been tough to stand up for myself in relationships, I recognize that my family's treatment damaged me as an adult. Forming strong friendships or romantic bonds is a struggle. In high school, my sister even slept with my boyfriend during our senior year for no clear reason. She never liked him and repeatedly called him unattractive. When my parents found out, they told me to move on. My sister faced no consequences, which showed how much they favored her. My father's silence as my mother emotionally tore me down my whole life made me believe no man would ever defend me or see my worth, making it hard to trust or connect in dating. But my life hasn't been entirely miserable because of them. One upside of being the less attractive sister was that I had no social life and focused entirely on studying. I graduated high school with a 4.0 and earned a full scholarship to my dream university. This was a relief because my mother told me the night before high school started that she'd pay for my sister's college since she was the eldest, but I'd have to fund community college myself. I remember crying and begging my mother why she didn't love me as much as my sister. She insisted she did, but claimed my sister deserved it more as her first child. I was thrilled to share my scholarship news, hoping it would finally earn me some pride. But when I told my parents about my scholarship, my father only said, "Nice work," and my mother didn't look up from her phone or respond. She ignored me for a week afterward. When I asked why she was upset about my achievement, she avoided eye contact and left the room. It felt like she hated me for succeeding when most parents would be ecstatic. That's when I realized how truly alone I was and how my family wanted me to feel isolated. I didn't understand why. Why did my mother have me if she was going to resent me my entire life, making me hate myself? The day I got my scholarship became one of the worst days of my life. I cried myself to sleep, accepting I'd never have a family who loved me like they loved my sister. I resented her for it. That night, I journaled until dawn about my future plans. Tired of being a sad, pitiful kid, I decided to channel my anger into academic success. Instead of seeking my parents' love, I'd focus on my studies, as I always had, to build something they could never give me. I'd become stable, independent, intelligent, and educated, even if unloved. So I did just that. I attended college and graduated with honors. I landed a great job at a company I interned for, earning 6 figures by 23. During holiday visits, I'd share my successes with my family, and extended relatives occasionally praised me, but my parents never went out of their way to acknowledge my achievements. As an adult, I knew better than to tell my mother about my high-ranking job or salary, as it would only deepen her resentment. But I told my father, and one year he said he was proud of me. It was the kindest thing my parents ever said. Yet my mother still treated me like an unwelcome guest during holiday visits, redirecting conversations away from me if anyone asked about my life. For instance, one Christmas, my uncle congratulated me on a promotion I'd mentioned earlier. It was my second promotion, with a significant raise, and I was house hunting. My uncle brought it up, and other relatives were surprisingly supportive. A cousin asked where I was looking to buy, but my mother cut me off, saying, "This is dull. Can we talk about something else?" Under her breath, she muttered, "It's probably not even true." I bought my house later that year, and when I shared it on social media, everyone in my family liked it, except my mother. I realized she was likely upset because my sister's life was so different. She went to college, fully funded by our parents, but flunked out and got pregnant by her first college boyfriend. I suspected our parents urged her to terminate the pregnancy, but she kept it and tried to make things work with the father, whom she barely knew. They were completely incompatible, yet they tried to fix their relationship by having another child. When I saw her post about her second kid, I fought back tears, knowing the child would likely grow up in a toxic environment due to my sister and her partner's awful behavior. I met him during holidays, but he never remembered my name or spoke to me. Every year, he'd eat our food without contributing anything. My sister and I grew further apart as adults, barely speaking after moving out. We followed each other on social media, but during rare holiday meetups, she'd insult my weight or clothing. I think she was projecting, as I wore high-end clothes and cycled through designer bags. She kept asking which fake bag I'd brought this time. One Thanksgiving, as soon as I walked in, my mother scanned me and said, "I see you're dressed up like the snobby jerk you are." It was rude and unprovoked. Despite her young kids, she'd curse and insult me in front of them. I don't feel bad saying my sister is a terrible person, nor do I regret my actions after she dumped her kids at my house. One Saturday, relaxing after a tough work week, my doorbell rang. I was shocked to see my sister's 10- and 7-year-old sons on my porch with overnight bags. They said their mom was going on an 8-week vacation and told them I'd watch them. My sister and I hadn't spoken since our family's July 4th barbecue, where she told me not to eat too much because she was sick of seeing my muffin top. I had no clue why she thought I'd babysit for 2 months. The boys were confused but polite, so I let them in and called my sister. She ignored my first 10 calls, but I persisted until she answered. I told her I wasn't watching her kids and threatened to call CPS if she didn't pick them up. As I searched for CPS's number, she dropped a bombshell. Her voice turned dark and menacing as she threatened to call my employer, claiming I wasn't taking my bipolar meds, which could get me fired. Though she knew nothing about my job, my career was everything to me, and I couldn't risk losing it. I hung up panicking about what to do. My head was spinning. Not only could I not care for her kids, but I had a month-long trip planned to visit my long-distance boyfriend, Greg, in Australia to meet his family. We'd been dating for years, and I'd been excited for this trip all year. It was a big deal since he was introducing me to his parents, and I wanted it to go perfectly. My sister's actions threw my life into chaos. I called my mother, unsurprised when she took my sister's side as always. I explained that my sister didn't even drop off her kids herself, and my mother said they were old enough to come alone. She guilt-tripped me, claiming my sister had done so much for me, and I needed to step up for her just this once. I lost it, yelling at her to name one time my sister helped me or improved my life. I told her that she and my sister had always treated me like an unwanted stray, not family. I demanded she come to my house so, at worst, she could watch the boys while I went to Australia. I doubted my sister would cut her trip short for her kids, given how easily she abandoned them. When my mother arrived, she gave me her usual cold stare. We sat in my living room, and she scolded me for being a bad sister, lecturing me about family loyalty. I ignored her and demanded to know what kind of vacation my sister was on. It was bizarre that she'd leave her kids with someone she despised, her own sister. I said it felt suspicious, and I wanted the truth if I was being dragged into this. My mother's face shifted, and she admitted my sister wasn't just vacationing, She was being flown out by her sugar daddy. I laughed, thinking she was joking, but her expression was serious. Exhausted, I snapped, asking how she could condone this. I said she'd raised a failure who'd rather chase a sugar daddy than work to support her kids. My mother predictably defended my sister. At one point, she said that no matter how much money I had or how nice my house was, I'd always be the ugly duckling compared to my sister. Born plain, you'll die plain. I nearly grabbed her and threw her out. When I screamed at her to leave, she refused. As I tried to guide her out, she pushed me into a coffee table, knocking over a cherished vase my boyfriend gave me. It shattered into pieces. Seeing it broken broke me too, and I had a full meltdown. I sobbed and yelled at my mother to get out or I'd call the police. I feel awful because my nephews heard me from the other room, but I was unraveling. After getting her out, my nephews peeked out asking if everything was okay. Their wide, scared eyes broke my heart. Though I barely knew them, they were just kids with a terrible mother, and I felt for them. I ordered food and let them play movies and games in my living room until they fell asleep. When I finally reached my sister, I raged at her for ruining my life and mentioned CPS again. She laughed cruelly, saying I had a choice, watch her kids or lose my job. She sneered that I was nothing without my career and would revert to a loser without it. That hit hard because it was true. My job was my identity, and I'd do anything to keep it. I cried, asking why she hated me so much and why she'd abandon her kids for a sugar daddy. She bragged she could make millions in 2 months and said I'd never understand. I think she was just trying to crush me, and it was working. We argued until she hung up after another threat to call my employer. I sobbed, feeling powerless. My nephews were downstairs watching a movie, so I called Greg from upstairs. I hadn't spoken to him since the kids were dropped off. I broke down, telling him about my sister's threats, my mother's hatred, and feeling trapped. Despite the distance, Greg made me feel supported. He was my only ally, and I was so grateful. He pointed out that my sister was likely committing crimes by abandoning her kids and blackmailing me. He suggested I call her again, get her to repeat the medical threat, and secretly record it as evidence. Greg knew my history with my family and said my sister was unhinged, so it wouldn't be hard to get her to repeat it. He urged me to prepare. Though scared, I agreed he was right. I knew my sister's instability better than anyone, so I followed his plan. Despite my emotional turmoil, I wanted my nephews to feel safe. I knew what it was like to feel unwanted as a child, and I didn't want them to feel that way. I went downstairs and played video games with them, which was surprisingly fun. They were shocked I knew first-person shooters, and their giggles warmed my heart. We ordered pizza and had a pepperoni eating contest, and I realized I genuinely cared for them. They were nothing like their mother. Despite her neglect, they were polite, well-mannered, and funny once they opened up. I noticed their worn-out clothes, holes in socks, too small shirts. My sister had packed them poorly, so I took them to the mall for new outfits. They went wild, running around happily. Knowing neglect firsthand, I wanted them to feel cared for. I bought them whatever they wanted, including Nintendo Switches. When I gave them the consoles, they cried and hugged me. On the way home, the 10-year-old cried again, asking why I was so kind and if they deserved it. I said they were my boys and deserved to be happy. He cried harder, saying he was upset his mom kept us apart. My heart broke. I apologized for not knowing them sooner, but said I was glad they were with me now. They opened up about their mother's cruel treatment, which shattered me. I cooked a big dinner, and they played their Switches all night. I called my sister again from my room, staying calm to execute Greg's plan. It was easy to steer her to the medical threat. She screamed that I'd be fired for hiding my craziness, saying no one would believe a sick loser like me. She sounded high, repeating odd phrases. I hung up after getting the recording, confirming I'd captured her threats. I was grateful for Greg's advice and began preparing for her to follow through. After putting the boys to bed, I called CPS first thing the next morning, reporting her abandonment and blackmail. I shared the recording, and the agent said it clearly showed neglect and criminal behavior. They'd start an investigation and notify my sister. I was shaking but spent the day bonding with my nephews to stay calm. The next day, my mother called. Still raw, I answered and had another huge fight. I told her I'd called CPS and that my sister would face consequences. She hung up immediately. I was trembling. Calling CPS was nerve-wracking, and telling my mother felt like a mistake. I knew she'd protect my sister, not caring about the boy's safety. I was sure she'd called my sister right after our call. The next morning at work, my receptionist said my supervisor scheduled an urgent meeting. I knew it was coming. My sister had followed through. In the meeting, my supervisors and a higher-up looked at me warily, saying a trusted family member claimed I was unmedicated for a severe mental condition and at risk of a breakdown. But I was ready. I knew my sister would try this, relishing the chance to ruin her plain sister's life. I pulled out my briefcase, handing them a doctor's letter and records proving I'd never missed a prescription and had been stable for years, backed by my physician, therapist, and psychiatrist. I explained my sister's mental health issues and our family's dysfunction, assuring them her claims were false. They reviewed the documents, apologized for the meeting, and said they were just doing due diligence. One supervisor even praised my performance, making me look good. I left the meeting laughing at how well it went and how my sister's plan backfired. I called her from my car, barely containing my glee, saying her plan failed in 15 minutes because she sounded unhinged. She raged, accusing me of lying, insisting I was fired. I laughed harder, saying she'd failed at everything, even getting me fired, and that her kids were ashamed of her. She called me names, saying I'd betrayed her, and vowed to fly back to make me regret it. I was still chuckling, but at home with my nephews, who were happier since arriving, I realized this wasn't over. My sister had nothing to lose, and was unstable, making me fear for my safety. I also worried I'd made a mistake calling CPS. I'd grown attached to my nephews and dreaded them returning to my sister. She was repeating our mother's cruelty, and I hated her for it. Checking on them that night, I cried quietly, knowing they deserved better. The next day was chaos. I woke to loud banging on my door. It was my sister with a massive man, 6'5", nearly 300 pounds, and my mother behind him. Before I could speak, the man shoved me down hard. My sister, mother, and the stranger stormed in as I collapsed, my shoulder aching. I screamed at my sister for bringing a stranger, and at him not to touch me, but he seemed to speak only Russian. My nephews, woken by the noise, came out confused. I tried to shield them, but my sister ordered the man to take them to the car, causing pandemonium. The boys begged to stay with me. As I sat stunned, my sister spit in my face. I sank to the floor as the man carried my nephews out. My mother, crying, left with them. They sped off in a black SUV, leaving the boys' belongings behind. No clothes, no switches, no food. I had an anxiety attack, heartbroken for my nephews, terrified and barefoot with a stranger and my unhinged sister. I was appalled my mother stood by as this man manhandled me and took the boys. After calming down, I called the police, who knew of the CPS case. Shaking, I described the stranger, the SUV's license plate, and their outfits. My sister looked wild, likely on drugs. My job trained me to notice details, so I recalled the plate clearly. The police took my report, and I waited, hoping for justice.